Happy Saturday and welcome to the Marketing Madman. Nick Constantino here, and we have a fun episode. We are going to get you lit. We're going to energize you. We're going to get you all powered up. All the puns. Let's get them all out of the way now. But I have with me Mr. Freddy Carmichael, VP of Corporate Affairs for Georgia Power. Freddie, how you doing, brother?
Good, man. It's good to be here. It's always good to be in Braves country.
It is always good to be in Braves. We are directly across the street from all of the hub of Braves country. So before we start, you've told me you've had some experience in radio. So talk a little bit. Let's go way back in the time machine and talk a little bit about the radio experience you have, because that will help everyone gauge how well you do at this.
Oh, great. Awesome. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I did radio actually in college. Started doing a radio show and did play-by-play for a community college that I went that I attended. Basketball. I think I did a little soccer, even though I didn't know enough about soccer. And then later, when I was in the newspaper industry, I had a weekly 2-hour Sunday Mornings with the Editor was the name of the radio program.
Oh, sexy. You know it's sexy when you bring the editor into it.
Exactly.
The editor.
Exactly.
Well, this show will be a little different. We're here to have some fun. We're here to talk some marketing. So let's start with a hard question, because that's what I like to do. Yeah. So you've seen in the news cycle probably, Plant Vogtle has been talked about in this market and in this country for weeks, years. Everyone's got a different story. Everyone's got a different political sling. I don't care about any of that crap, to be honest with you, because everybody's got an opinion and we know what they're all like and they all stink. So here's my thing. So if you can look back and say how you could have marketed Plant Vogtle differently to both the internal and external parts. So your internal people and external and your customers and everybody, how would you, and you can't take the easy answers. We would have said it would have taken longer than we did, because that's the easy way out. So talk about, as a communications, as corporate affairs, how would you have marketed it differently internally and externally than what you saw? And again, hindsight's 20/20, but what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Nick, looking back on it, because there were points in time where I was not at Georgia Power.
Sure.
But when I came here 10 years ago, I relocated my family from Mississippi to Georgia because of this project.
Wow.
And I was in love with the story from day one. I mean, building the first new nuclear units in the United States in 30 years was just super appealing as a storyteller. But man, looking back on that experience and then going to different places within Southern Company, I think hindsight's 20/20. But if you look back at it, sometimes in marketing, communications, whatever, we tend to sometimes be a little on the defensive or reactive. And we're driven or sometimes motivated by what the opposition is saying or whatever the headwinds are. And it hamstrings us to actually play offense and talk about it. This is an incredible project. And so full circle moment for me looking at it now is, now we get to the finish line of this race. Everybody wants to celebrate it, right? So your regret is looking back of, did I do good enough job telling the story on the front end, why we were doing this, what it means to Georgia? And did we take all those opportunities of telling that positive story all along the way? And I think, again, there's some great people that were involved in marketing all the way around with Plant Vogtle from the beginning to the end. But I would say all of them collectively would probably say, I wish we could have done a better job of telling that proactive story instead of sort of trying to block and tackle.
Yeah, and just from externally, I will say that that's almost impossible when it's a narrative that you can't control. And think about how quickly the political tide has changed in this state and in this city. I mean, what we were doing 20 years ago to what we're doing now almost feels like light years and eons. When you initiated a project to where it is now, the political climate changed so much, the population changed so much. I think ultimately, and it's a story that we're trying to tell together, but what do you think is going to power the growth of this state? Do you think that we just magically grow by the percentages we're growing overnight? Do you think all these people that are leaving these states like New York and California to come here, you think that the power is just magical, that we could just one day wake up and it's there? So I think I agree with you. I think proactive marketing, but I also think that there's only so much you can control, and the political inclinations and the whims of other people are impossible to predict or control. So you're right. You don't want to be on the defensive, but at the same time, you almost have to brush those off, because everyone's got an opinion.
And what you can control is your story. And again, I mean, I think looking back to the very beginning of this, what was appealing to me coming from Mississippi is the American ingenuity involved in this. And again, building what eventually is now the largest generator of clean energy in the U.S. I mean, again, you look back on it, one of the things you can't control is that story, the why behind the fact that we are looking to provide clean, safe, reliable, and affordable energy to Georgians for decades. You know, not just, my kids are here now and they've been in Georgia for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I want something that is going to be reliable for them.
Love it. And I think and I texted you last night, I think one of the best things is going to be the validation when you see how many plants of this and these kind of things are taken up in the next couple of years across the country, and to know that you took it on the chin for all of these people and for all of the people that are like, all right, so let's look at sheer facts, okay? The net good outweighs the net bad. Let's move forward. And they're going to do that because you guys had the nerve and the gumption to take it on first. So I applaud you for that. It's a big thing. Let's segue into just the general space. So let's call it what it is. You are a commodity. You are providing something that most people need. That's a hard thing to market. How do you differentiate yourself? How does your corporate voice sound? I mean, it's the thing. So tell us just about yourself and your theory behind this, and what Southern Company as a whole has influenced you and how you think about marketing something that people need. Like, let's be clear. You don't have to market it.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody needs it. You don't have to market it, but your relationship with the consumer is so important, and how you market is so much different than someone who's selling, Apple versus Android. Like those are hyper competitive. You're in an industry where you're more about your messaging. Talk about your thought process there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the average person out there would look at it and say, what are you advertising for? I mean, it is a regulated utility. I think that our obligation goes beyond just delivering energy to your house. It's explaining why, and it's explaining the planning that we're doing for the next 60 to 80 years for something like a Plant Vogtle. But it's also making sure people understand how to use their energy properly, making sure all the energy efficiency tips, we're not selling a product, but we are making sure that our customers are using it in a way that is best for them.
Do you think it's off-putting for a consumer, for someone who's selling them something, saying, hey, we want you to buy less of this? Because I think the thought process behind marketing is always buy more stuff you don't need.
That's why the why, I think, is so important. Like, I think when people understand our role in the community, and I mean, look, when you go back to the history of Southern Company, Atlanta doesn't become what Atlanta is without Georgia Power. Birmingham doesn't become what it is without Alabama Power. And I think that there was so much. They're completely tied at the hip from the development and the explosion of growth in the South.
And it follows a pattern that doesn't exist. Most cities are built on harbors or waterways or places that Atlanta is built. There's no rhyme or reason other than I understand that the trains came in here as a hub point, but the way this city built and how the airport came in here does not follow the logic of how cities are built in this country or in the world even. So think about you're of influence, but even that much more influence because there was no other point of growth that this city had other than the investment that came in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the airport. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here as now the 6th largest media market in America is Atlanta.
Yeah, and even going back again before that, I mean, if you look at people coming to the South, look at our climate. It's not California, and so you got to have, electricity was a big part of that. Being able to heat and cool your home, cool in particular at that time, electricity and making sure that it was available here was a big deal. And so harnessing the power of the rivers and the lakes and the dams that were created for hydropower at the infancy of Southern Company is such a cool story.
It's crazy, and all the lakes here are fake. They're all man-made lakes. Most people don't even understand these things. They don't just lakes just don't just pop up for no reason. So all the lakes that you take your boat on, everything were made by the Army Corps of Engineers, if I understand it, for a reason. And again, if you think about it, how much manpower, time, investment was put in by your forefounders and people before you to put this city where it is. When you think about it in that grand scale, it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, honestly, going back to your original question about like the marketing side of it, it's the why behind it. We had some early executives who used to say that our role as a company was to make our communities better off because we're there. And that plays out in so many different ways, but that's just beyond just delivering clean, safe, reliable, affordable energy to your house. And so there's so much more from a communications standpoint that we are trying to convey and tell. Because, again, the average consumer, they don't know. But they do know this.
The power goes out.
When they flip that switch, they want it to come on. When it's hot in the summer, they want their air conditioner to work. They want all of those things.
And, of course, they don't want the personal responsibility that goes along with it. Like your house is terrible, your insulation's bad, your windows are bad. They don't want that part of it, but they want their thing to go on. So personal responsibility would be damned. They just want everything to go on. Yeah. And I think it's one of the things, if you look just in reviews in general, anything, right? It's never the people in the middle that talk. It's the people with the worst experience most of the times and the people with the best best experience. That bell curve is not a representation of what really goes on. Realistically, you're serving how many people in Georgia Power?
2.7 million customers.
2.7 million. Out of that many people, how many complaints do you really get a year?
Oh yeah, that's very minimal.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So again, but somehow in society we've given them the loudest voices, and I will keep politics out of this. I don't want to have that conversation. But I'm saying, is it fair that an entity that is serving 2.7 million people is the loudest people or the pissed off people of the 25 to 35, 40, 50, 100 people? That just doesn't make any sense. So I know how hard your job is, and now that we've had that conversation, now we can have some fun because I just wanted to beat you up on that and see where you went with that. So we got about a minute and a half left in this segment. So talk about how you got into the industry and what you like most about what you do.
Well, so I was a journalist. I mean, I was in print journalism for 10 years. I was actually a broadcast major. I failed at that, so I ended up doing journalism, but I also like to write. But it honestly is a true story. My grandfather was an area operator at Mississippi Power. Okay. He always told me to go work for Southern Company, and I thought, man, that's really boring. I had to work for the power company. I had a great aunt that worked at Alabama Power. But when I was involved in the community back in Mississippi and trying to make it better, the folks from Mississippi Power were the ones who were there making a difference. Wow. And I was like, I want to go work for that company. Wow. And so that
you got in at the ground level. The bureaucracy is much bigger in Atlanta than it is in Mississippi and Mississippi Power. So you got in at the level where you're seeing the impact that it's made with your own eyes. It's not just conjecture or you're seeing it with your own eyes.
Yeah, no, I got in the company doing energy audits. I mean, at the lowest level, doing energy audits in Mississippi, where it's a poor state. Yeah. And you're going in helping people try to lower their bills, all the way to messaging Vogtle. Wow. In its infancy 10 years ago, and spent some time at Southern Company, did a lot of work with the PGA Tour and what we were trying to communicate there, and then spent 5 years at the gas company. Yeah. So, I've been around a little less than 12 years now at Southern Company total.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll get into what you like most after the break. But you've been listening to The Marketing Madman on Extra 106.3, and we will be right back.